Okay, hey guys. So today I'm going to talk about what it takes to build a product, which is in this context is still going to be very simple with only iOS client and the backend, but the principle applies. So first of all, let's say how to build a mobile app. It's actually very simple. You open Xcode, you start to build the UI, you add some logic. For example, you build a calculator, or like just say like a fart app. You place a button here, and you record a sound. You place it, add some logic in the app so that when the button is clicked, play a sound. That's it. So here, like no planning, no management, no like a product definition, like no marketing. You just put there, and 15 years ago you could make $1 million from it. But that is definitely not scalable. And what we are going to talk about here is that the very basic concept is that as long as it takes more than one person to build a product, the work is not doubled. The communication will cost a lot, and whenever your team spends, the cost will keep growing. You can read all the management theories and everything you like, but let's just list a bare minimum about a team. How many roles are there it will take to build a product? So here, let's put the management roles aside. So like recruiters to get new people onboarded, project manager to help to manage a team, like CTO and CEO to make the ultimate decisions, whatever these kind of things. These are not a must to build a product. To build a product, the bare minimum is at these roles. So you need a product owner. So which is it could be one person, it could be several people, but ideally you want only one person to own the product to have the final say. There can be different stakeholders. Someone gives a legal consultants, someone safeguard the regulation, whatever. But in general, there should be one dedicated product owner. Remember, it's a role, it's not a person. A person can fit in different roles, and the role can fit in multiple people. But in this case, a product owner better have a dedicated person to handle this, and he can work on different things. And if let's say if this product owner, which is very common, that you have an idea about how to build the app, you are an iOS developer, and you want to build an app, then you can be the product owner. And in this case, the communication between the product owner and the mobile developer zero, because you are the same person. But remember, as long as you have not a single person to handle multiple roles, so the communication cost is not neglectable. So I will describe this in details in later section, but for now, let's just keep looking at what it takes to build an app. So you need a user experience designer. What this means is that you need to define basically what the user's experience about. And that covers not only the happy path, which is a mistake a lot of people make. They just lay down some wireframe and call it a day. So that is not, and basically then they just jump directly either from coding or from using the 20 years ago it's a Photoshop, and now it's a Figma, Sketch to start building the UI. So that is a very common mistake I see from startups to very high scaled Fortune 500 enterprises. And that is not ideal because you don't want to miss all the edge cases. Because the thing here is that you need to cover this eventually, right? And if you don't have that planned in the beginning of it, then you mess up your whole roadmap. You mess up all your estimation and everything. So eventually you'll find out, oh, the edge case handling, I didn't think about that. And then you go back and design some screens and write some code, and then you just mess up your planning. And of course, Agile is all about adapt to the changes. But if something is we know that's going to come, like error handling, so why not to build it in the first place? And secondly, the UI designer, this is essential because this is what the user actually sees. Yes, the front-end developers can do the UI design as well, but usually I'm a front-end developer, I'm not a designer, but usually we don't do a very good job in terms of what just makes it looks good. It's very subjective. AI may change this in the future, but for now, maybe now it's already like like it can do something for you already. But in general, you can say that it's AI role, or like AI will replace the mobile developers eventually. But anyway, it's a role, not necessary to be a human, not necessary to be the same person, and you can be the same person. For example, you can be the UI designer and the UX designer, but if that's the case, you don't need to talk about yourself with yourself, say that, hey, this is user appearance. Let's say you want to disperse some error. So how to present that? You don't need any communication because it's yourself. But on the other hand, if there are two people, you need to like build some documentation around that. And then for the front end, you need let's say an iOS app, so you need an iOS developer, obviously. You can choose your tech stack and everything, but that's not what going to be covered here. What is going to be covered is that how the front end talk with the back end. So this part is going to be technical, so I will defer this part later. And for the back end, of course, what you do is you just had a server set up. So I have a bunch of other talks about the system architecture design. So let's just, if we just recap, so basically you need like your own server, and then to hold to hit some API. And in this case, you mean like it's an HTTP call, and then eventually it will be wrapped down to some TCP/IP call with something like this, like behind the scene, and you need to know what it is. And of course, there are some tools to help you. I will go to the technical part later. But the bottom line is that you need a backend developer. And here again, if you have the same person work as a front end and backend, this is perfectly fine, not very normal. Like you can't really build a large chunk of features, but it can be done. And again, in this case, you may save yourself some documentation. But actually, at this point, even the same person, it's probably a better idea to document your approach. The reason is that we are very bad at remembering all the details. Our brains, human brains, are not built as a computer. We built in a way that we can fit in something in our brains relatively quickly. We understand it, and then we understand the logic. We remember some of it, but we forgot almost all the details. And when we pick it up, sometimes we do need some reminder to help us to recollect our memory. And the last thing is DevOps, which is operations, is the one who help you to deploy your thing. So for the front-end app, iOS app, it's relatively simple. Just go to App Store. You can do it manually. Even like a product owner can do it if he wants. For the backend, it's usually not straightforward, but there are still some like GUI-based platforms allowed to deploy. But usually, we will think about something like scaling, and connecting different services, database, and the applications. So putting all these things together, it may be a little bit tricky. So that the operations are now more like a DevOps, which means the people are more technical. They understand the policies, but they also need to know at least several scripting languages and the shell environment, everything to help you to to do the delivery. Again, so if these are different persons, that you want to have a different document to describe the approach, so that to make everyone's replaceable, and even for yourself after half a year when you want to revisit, or you get a new developers and you want to show him the thing, you don't want to keep talking like what I'm doing. That's exactly why I'm recording the video, right? So you want to provide enough materials for the developers, for the new guys to start working as soon as possible. I saw some cases, people just takes 3 or 4 months to get started. That is not good. We don't want that. Okay, so now let's just go from not the first part, because I would imagine you already have a concept about what kind of a product you want to build. You may start with a mock-up app if you are front end, if you are an iOS developer. So you may start with some like a Figma design if you are a designer, and you may start off with some like a spreadsheet if you are some business person. So all this kind of result in the same thing, that is basically called a product specification. And this can be a traditional Word document, or you may not have it. But at some point, whenever you need to work with other people, So you do need to describe what it is. You can't just throw other people say, hey, this is a video about, I'm talking about a bunch of screen designs and let them know automatically. You could done better. Like you have some sessions, screen sharing sessions, so people to ask a question, you answer. But when it comes down to the design, the development phase, things need to be organized and documented. Then now the typical approach is that you have something called user story, which like something basically break down into very specific things. For example, like when as a user, when I enter the login screen, I can press the login button to log in. And given that there will be different scenarios, that if my internet is down, we show something, and if the password is wrong, we show something, blah blah blah. So all these kind of things, it sounds a bit like like why would you need to document this? You can just start writing the app right away, saying that hey, we need to log in, we need to log in. The thing here is that again, if it's not the same person, then different people always have different mindsets. For example, error handling. So like to display an error, there are multiple ways. You can just display a system, like alert, or you can build something that is a toast that shows on screen, disappear after a while, or they have to be dismissed manually. So, and now we don't talk about like all the disability accessory feature, just like this. So if you don't describe, so how to present an error, so how can the developer or the designer know how to do that, right? So it has to come down to some way to mention. So why people are going this user story approach is because people don't want to write like a 100-page like document, because they want to do things like chunk by chunk. And in this case, you say that, okay, I know it's going to be a login module, and when we start working on it, then we go to the agile approach, we groom the user story, and then I say that describe all these different scenarios. This is fine, right? This is perfectly fine. Actually, I think this is preferred. But here, you need to come out from something, and this something probably is going to be the user experience. So that is why I would say that defining the product, if you have like a 100-page long Word document, you don't really need that, but you just have some slides or some like mock-up app, or like some screen designs, you really should have some sort of user experience flow. And this can be done in multiple ways. So if you just Google it randomly, so you can build the actual screens, but the thing here is that building screens take a lot of time. And it's kind of something similar with writing the app. So you want to save your time. So of course, the easiest way is just use a whiteboard. You just start writing something there, and then like beginning to draw something like this. Of course, here it probably doesn't include the failure case, like what if it fails, right? So these things should be included in the user experience section. So here, if it's missing, then it's not completed. By the way, still the iPhone, good old iPhone first generation kind of UI design, but still the principle applies. And from here, yeah, definitely cover all the edge cases. And before you move to next phases, think about this, because let's say you have different ways to handle different errors. Let's say like you want to show offline, offline alert, saying that hey, your internet is offline. Like this is going to be a different error message. And in this case, you can reuse the design in multiple places. And if you light out in the user experience design section, then it will save time in the UI design section, right? So here, it's kind of like the visual thing, but the most visual thing is of course the UI design. So the UI design is something that you actually have all the elements there, and it needs to be approved by the product owner, saying like, hey, this is exactly going to fully represent the user experience, and this is what I want. And 15 years ago, people were using like Photoshop, and then the developers just use some on-screen rulers to measure the pixels, or as designers, hey, like you are not very busy, so just give me the paddings information, the file, the image size, and everything. Now we have like a more flexible layout schemes, and so everything measured by points or pixels doesn't really work anymore. And now we have better tools. So I used like InVision and in Zeppelin with Sketch and Figma. So all these kind of things, they have one thing in common, which is they offer some dev-friendly feature, which is something like they call it like in Figma, they call it dev mode, which allows you to inspect the elements. So this is obviously not only a mobile concept, also the web concept as well. But basically, you can figure out like the pixels here, and some tools are good for you to figure out the flexible elements. For example, if the screen size is going to be large, then this font is probably stays the same, and this position is probably going to be hugging the right section. And then here, it's something like auto, yeah, actually shows here. So it shows that this is automatically laid out, so that the developers can blindly follow the spec instead of try to guess. And whenever you try to guess something that is not documented, and this is bad. Why? Because as I said, different people have different mindsets. So if you ask, it's going to cost your time. If you do it yourself, you can lead to some mistake, some misunderstanding. So this kind of tools will help you for like in these scenarios. Okay. So now, once all this is done, then the transition from UI to mobile is kind of like very straightforward. Actually, from the product design, the UI design, as I said, they are literally the same thing. The UI design can be served as a product spec, and can be fulfilled. Can be like completed with the future user stories and everything. And from user experience to UI design, this is almost a one-on-one like mapping. So that from these screens, you just make it look better and make it like this. And then like you add things, but still like you cannot go back. Actually, yeah, if it's a fulfilled document, you can go back. But yeah, that's why like these two are kind of like a similar thing. That's a very strict mapping relationship. The same thing applies to UI and mobile, only the display, the rendering, the presentation part. Actually, it's not really only the rendering, because the presentation covers the user experience flow, and that is something that can be done without all the other parts, but it does require all these three combines. But if your UI design is really good, so like if you construct your Figma file structure very good way, and in that case, you really don't need the UX. The developer can reference to it to get a high-level picture, but yeah, like they should have all the information to do the representing and the rendering layer. And to this part, where I'm at. So this is like 18 minutes. So this part is kind of like the more visualized, like a more like straightforward path. And now I'm going to talk about the part that you want to build your front end and back end. How do they want to work together? There are different ways. So from here, I'm pretty confident about the previous contents I talked about. But from here, there are again different people have different mindset, and I'm going to follow a sort of kind of a mechanical approach that you can just follow it, and may not have the best result, but it shouldn't give you the worst result. And you will see while we are proceeding with my explanation about my approach, which is something like so from UX to UI to mobile, we cover that part. But what about the backend? Where the backend is from? So there are different approaches. And I am going to talk about the approach that is it basically can work. It may not be the best. You could construct the whole thing from the very beginning of the stage, but on the other hand, you can construct it like from the UX and UI layer, and that is what I'm going to say, which is why like I think this is more mechanical, but it's definitely something can be done. So from user experience or like a user interface, as I said, these two things are basically interchangeable. So let's just take this as an example, because all the elements are here. The backend, it doesn't really care about about the font size and everything. That's front end cares. But backend does care about all the fields, like how this field, what do this field mean? What should be displayed there? Well, not 100%, but how they are going to be displayed if they involve a dynamic, which is backend logic. So how to do this? So this is the core. This is from some very important part I'm going to cover in this session. So basically, you start, right? You start from the user interface, and in one user interface, some people, the product owner, if he has expertise of the backend, if he doesn't, then he probably want to do the planning with the backend developer or some other technical people. But the bottom line is the product owner always need to be there. He needs to be there to say that this information is pulling from backend. So he need to make that decision. So for example, like in one screen, so like again in the login screen, something login screen, you have a login. So you say that, okay, so in this screen, I think we should call a login API. And here, the backend guy can start drafting, lay out the overall design, which is something that is not rocket science. It is just basically common sense. So hey, we already have usually you don't really hard code it. You maybe call it like a base API, something like that. To make it kind of looks like and here you have like a basic path. So the path, root path, or then you start here like a version, something like this, to make it more flexible. And then you can also may not be needed to just log in to make it login, because this is who is going to consume this this front end API, this API is going to be the front end guys. So whatever makes sense to them, whatever makes sense to the product, that makes sense. And from the product point of view, you want to log in and you want to pass let's say email and password, right? So here you have this laid out. So this is very basic. This is this is not really the API spec. We'll have something fancier than this, but here this is a bare minimum. And is it the bare minimum? Actually, I was wrong. It's not really bare minimum, because here you only consider the input part. You need to give it the output part. So then you may have if it's a SaaS, usually what they do is that when you log in, you get the user object back. So now you don't call a get user in API. So to reduce API overhaul. So in this case, it will return something like a user object, right, or user model or whatever. And if it fails, there are different failure cases. Or different cases will be for one, probably expire token, something like that. So you need to reauth. And then if it's for one, is it going to be enough context? Probably yes. And if it's not, there are different, for example, wrong password, and then or the wrong username. Then you may get for 00 with some context. Some context, some message will be nice, but it's not essential, because the message usually is not a good practice to display that message directly in the front end. Localization is not covered, and the different platforms not covered. You don't want to do it in that way. Instead, you want to have a dedicated API error code, for example, with like this. So something wrong username, wrong email. And this basically will involve some other discussion if some other stakeholder jumps in. For example, some stakeholders say that it's a security concern to tell user whether email system is in your system or not. So now I think you see a lot of places. In a lot of places, it says that wrong username or password, the generic error message. I particularly don't like it. I don't really think it resolves really any real life problems, but it's a suggested approach, and this sacrifice user experience, because if they mess up their username, their email or password, they didn't know what they mess up with, so that's kind of bad for them. Sometimes I just hate it. So am I registered? I cannot remember, and is it just because wrong password, or you need to start a new account? I don't know. So this is super frustrating. But anyway, this is user experience always give way to the big head security CEO guys to minimize the risk. Nature of business, I don't really care. But anyway, like these are the bare minimum of the spec. So you see this. So after this is a design. Of course, this will not be enough because if it's a wrong password, you are going to like have two different errors, and then you think about if there are any other errors. Definitely, like for timeout, you don't need to think about that because backend can, if it times out, it times out. Backend basically says nothing. That's the front end need to handle. But are all these errors handled or not? So think about this, and if your answer is yes, then that's good. Just make sure that go back and check your user experience spec and see are all these scenarios are described here. And if yes, then you are good. If not, or like you described more scenarios than the user experience, then the user experience guy didn't do a good job. They should define that in the user experience part in a better way. But if you already, it's very common that in the middle of the project you already have a bunch of design user experience, and in that case, you can just take on the, like something like login PNG, not really PNG, a page here, and then like start to draw some lines saying that hey, this button will trigger this API, and these things will be displaying something. And then because I already paid for the designer and his I don't want to pay more than that, you can just describe hey show system a system default alert, something like this. So if you do something like this, if it's going to be okay for the front end developer, enough information, then maybe you can get away from this. But as I mentioned, it's probably not ideal because you want to define it before you actually writing your code and everything. Actually, before you even start designing your script. But yeah, different approaches, different states of the app, there are always things around. And is this enough? Of course, it's not enough, because when you log in, there are different Twitter login, LinkedIn login. Those things may have different front-end technology SDKs, but they may share the same API, which is probably something that is not exactly this one. It's maybe the third-party one, so that you can log in with a token instead of email. So basically, all these kind of things. Think about this, and this is you need to define all this first before your front end and back end development. So as I said, you could get away, and you could get away go until this path, but you definitely cannot get away when you already write your code. I saw this in some projects, and what you end up is that you have to go one way back to rework on this, because if the front end, the back end just work without thinking about all this upfront, then what you end up with is something that's very random. So that the edge cases are very likely to be not covered, and that is really bad for you. You want to take one step back and start to build something from here. By the way, all these things can be built in Confluence, GitHub, whatever, or even Word document, strongly not recommended, or Google Doc, probably better, use spreadsheet, whatever. But basically, you have something from here, and then these informations, are they good enough for the backend developers and the front end developers? The answer is both yes and no. The yes answer is that if you want to just not be fancy, just say that hey, try to get something from my mind, what I mean by these kind of things, then they can work. And then again, as I said, it's like designing your screen with Photoshop, and the front end guys need to ask questions from time to time. And how to not do that, how to make them more efficient and things better documented, that is by utilizing some other tools. I am thinking two tools here. So one is something like a Postman. So basically, yes, you define this in Word document, but this can this be changed to, let's say, Golang or Python code? Definitely not. And while you are doing that, there will be some edge cases, not only edge cases, the details you need to communicate. That is what we don't want to do. So what do you want to do is that so now you know that these kind of things are here. And then again, it's the product owner's a decision, but here, some guy, either backend guy or whatever, he understands what this API means, and he needs to put this in something like Postman and use what is called the mock API, so that what you'll be seeing is that in Postman, I'm not going to show your Postman screen. So basically, some APIs here, some parameters here, and what you are going to do is that you hit the you set the environment to mock, and then you click the send button, and then because those JSONs are already saved locally, so you can get the, let's say, user model right away. So that what this does is that this will help the front-end developer to work with the actual JSON schema. Because if you ask them to construct a schema, that's not really the front-end's work. The backend should define these JSON schemas and then ideally put in the JSON file in the Postman so that the front-end can work. Basically, what you will do is that probably they are going to either set up a local mock service or they just do a not the recommended way, which is copy and paste the JSON payload in your app and then start writing like a mock later or something. But anyway, this is the JSON part should be the backend part, and I would recommend to use something to document this. So basically, you can skip this part if you know how to construct the JSON. But the edge case, I mean, to omit the details like what the user models look like, you can just leave it here. But the user model needs to be reviewed to the front-end developer at some point, and that is something that I would say maybe you can put it here, but a better way probably is to use something like Postman, so that all this payload can be viewed while you are hitting the mock APIs. So when you do this, there are something that when you I need to take one step back, which is when you say users mock object. This is kind of something that it will contain some invisible thing. It not only appear in the UI and UX design, but in the app, in the implementation details, you will hold this user information somewhere. And again, so you don't want to cover those front-end implementation details in your UX and UIs, and that's why I didn't mention. But you probably, as a product owner, you need to know that okay, so after hitting the user the login API, I don't want to call the get user API unless I made some changes to the profile, something like that. So you need to know that. But there are also some APIs, for example, when you want to render some information. So this kind of information, if you only have the payload, is not enough. So basically, we need is three parts. One is the high-level model, what is it about, and the second thing is that what it will contain. So this could in the Postman collection, you have this a user model defined in the JSON form, and here, I would say that it is possible. It would be great for the product owner or his tech lead or whatever to help him to come up with something like this, so that you know what the fields are and how these fields, if it's not a user, for example, they are posts. So how this post object is going to be mapped to the front end. So and here. And this is basically how you construct your API. So you don't think in a way that what kind of information my API can provide. You should think in a way that what information this API should provide. Your API shouldn't provide more information. For example, you could build an API to just dump the whole database to the front end and then let the front end do all the logic. So this is definitely a terrible approach. And the same thing applies. So if the front end screen changes, should the backend API change? It should, because you shouldn't provide all the information just try to guess. Well, it might be used. Well, at some point everything might be used in one screen. So you just dump everything in one screen, and that's okay. This saves time or something like that. That's not how it works. So in the best practice, and that is basically, I'm a little bit hesitant about the GraphQL. So basically, I think the front end should be pretty thin, pretty dumb. Because front end, trust me. So even though we don't copy it, try to put as much business logic as possible in the backend, the front is not easy. It's not easy to construct. Phone call. Here's a pause. I think I'm back. Yeah, I'm back. Great. Okay, so now let's talk about let's just keep talking. So basically, the mapping. to the from the all these fields, they should demonstrate have tightly coupled with the current UI implementation. Because trust me or not, the front-end developer will have a lot of things to do. So like as much business logic can shift from front and back end, you will have an advantage when you decide to support another platform, for example, like a web app or Android or whatever. Because the more logic you put in the back end, the thinner the front end will have. And in this case, don't say in VNet, hey, I just dump the whole database, dump the whole table from feed it to the front from the to the front end. One exception is that if several screens on the front end have, let's say, like different sorted or whatever, different way to present the same file, and if these files there can be share most of the fields except for several. So like one field is missing in just one of the screen, but 7 or 8 other fields are used in that screen. So that is fine to build a common API to fulfill all the business logic. That is fine. But use your best judgment and try to put down as fewer information as possible. And usually this will actually increase your backend performance. So usually, if you, for example, if you pick 10 fields or versus 1 field from a database, it's may not the performance difference may not be net different, but if it's something from one table, 2 table, definitely that's going to be some impact. So here again, you need to in this screen in this design. So either you have this sort of document, or you have Postman direct collection. You need to build some relationship, saying that this field, which field is used by which UI component, and there could be a simple representation which is a display string, or there could be some if you return a date like UTC time, it's going to be displayed in user's local time. So these kind of things are basically common sense. And contains very minimum logic, but still need to describe that. And there could be some different logic. For example, some temperature based on the user's localization, the user's preference set, all these kind of things, or some calculations needed. For example, you have a timestamp, but you need to display 5 days ago, 6 days ago. So all these kind of things, there will be some logic, and you need to describe that somewhere for the front-end developers. Because for the back-end, a date is enough. But the different ways to present, you need to write a document to say how it's going to be done. Again, if the product owner is the same person as a front-end developer, you don't have to do that. You know how it's going to be, what it takes for you to render your UI. But if that's not the case, just don't assume that the front-end developers knows it automatically. And this is, so the mock thing is the mock Postman call. It will be helpful for the front end to unlock themselves. And but on the other hand, there are also something that is going to be useful for the backend. And know this, until this point, I'm only talking about the planning. So the front end hasn't write a single line of code. The backend doesn't write a single line of code. But here, the backend needs to start writing code to support something called Swagger. And this is something typically is done by the backend developers, but it's arguably can be done by the product owner and his mates instead of the backend developers. Why? I will show you. Because you need to what you see, what the Swagger page means is that when you have some call, so you know what the results are going to be look like. And here it doesn't. It has some error code, which is good. And for but it doesn't have the payload. It can be more fancy, but basically, this information will be a more strict thing from the JSON, because in JSON, based on different parameters, you can get different results. But here, the model will going to be more it's basically going to be better. And how to construct this? So this requires you to have something a show account, something like this. as this is a the gene framework with Golang. So you need to have some like functions here, but this function doesn't need to be done. You can just write an empty function, and these empty functions it's very easy to write them because these functions are based on these APIs at some level. You could like call different APIs in the same function or different APIs can call the same function. That's basically it's possible. But at some point usually we call it a router. So basically you route a string-based URL request to part of the code. So at this router level, at least you have to have something that is, have a one-on-one relationship between the API and your code. And usually it's the orientation is added at the container level, but controller level. But that is technical details. You can figure out how to properly do that. But my point is that start to write some code like this. Start to write some code like this, and in your backend code base. And this doesn't take like some code like this will work. And what the backend or the product owner need to do is to add these annotations based on your discussion here and here. And this is better than Postman in a way that you can generate the JSON here, right? So you can generate JSON here, and you have you can also have the different parameters to provide more information. That's a good thing. The bad thing here is that in order to make this to work, you need to define the models first. Here it says model.account. So you already define your account model somewhere. And this account model is something that looks very similar with JSON, but not in the JSON syntax. And this defining the model may require something like Postman or this to help you to define that. So only after that is defined, then you can come up with your model in the code, and you can start working on something like that. Something like the annotation, and based on this annotation, the rest of things is simple. You just it can generate all the the documents automatically for you. Basically, whatever I said about this, are they a must? Not really. But what is a must? This is a must. So you need to define the possible parameters. You need to define the path. You need to define the models. You need to define the different code strategy. And do you need to define all these things in your backend code? Absolutely not. You can just get rid, let's say that's just one person responsible for the front and backend. He knows what exactly needs to be implemented, and he has a super good, superhuman memory, and he can just start writing logic right away. But generally, that's not how it works. Generally, even it's you need to have something like this to remind you what the API is constructed and help you to spark bug. If you see that, okay, so the document doesn't really cover some of the cases here. So this is something that is inevitable. That's why we want to draft like this, and you need to know one thing very important, which is this thing has no relationship with the implementation. As I said, you can just start with an empty implementation and start writing this. So you could not returning 404, and still the document writes returning 404. And in that case, what do you have? You have a bug. Either you have a bug in your documents, or you have a bug in your code. So you have a bug, and that is why it's good, because if the front-end developer or some other guys observe the inconsistency, and then he knows that, okay, so there's a bug. But the bad thing here is that it's back-end developers' responsibility to make sure that this thing is properly implemented, and it's the responsibility of the one who wrote this annotation. It may be back-end developer, it may be product owner, but it's his responsibility to make sure this reflects business logic, so that everyone does his job, and then eventually, you have something that's totally traceable, and when something goes wrong, you can just look at it. Something can be generated automatically. For example, the model. So the model, it's you don't have to write the model here, which is a good thing. But the bad thing here is that all the other things, it may not really be there. So in this case, if you say that, well, the Swagger should just generate all the different kinds of responses based on your different scenarios. Well, I'm sorry, but that's not how it works. This is a dedicated work to work on this, and This is arguably much easier than the implementation, and this is provide a very like a high level picture before you work on the front end and the back end. And I think this is very, very important because the planning only after all this work is done, then you know exactly what you need to do, and then it's the front and back end work to write code. Without this, you can still write code, but I see in a lot of places like you just end up with a code that doesn't cover all the cases, and people have to ask questions from time to time. It's just frustrating. Like I was a developer, I was frustrated, and for the product owner, he may think that like, well, I save time, but I don't spend time on this. But eventually, he just bite the bullet and have to take all the consequences with more time in communication and everything. So if possible, don't do that. Do it in a proper way. You don't have to follow like all the approaches I mentioned, but just think why I mentioned all these tools, why I mentioned all these steps, what are their purposes, is to segregate the responsibility between these roles. It may not be the same person, but even for it may not be the different people, but even for the same person, he may need all these insights after a while when he revisited the product, when he just want to add new feature and everything. So all these things, as I said, it's more like a mechanical approach that if you follow, you end up with some results that you don't take a whole team of genius to help to build a product, but instead it's just anyone that have the common sense can follow this process and deliver the product and in a more like a manageable way. So not something like it's done what it's done. But in this case, if you have all these specs built, and I mean if you don't have the spec built, you know you're going to build this spec. And if you have this spec built, you know how to fit in all your all your sprints and everything. So this is something that I hope you guys enjoy. It's pretty long, not really in depth, but to recap, the part from the product to the UI, and then from the product slash UI slash UX to the front end, mostly back end. So these kind of things, they have been covered. And all these things, they don't really matter with what all DevOps do, because DevOps only, whatever you throw to me, I deploy it. It doesn't matter. So in this case, not a lot of information related with this section, but whenever we talk about the environment, like deployment policies, we will come back and visit this. So thank